week 3 of testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, starting with the music mogul's former assistant, Capricorn Clark, taking the stand.
Why would we need a 50-foot bed?
I mean, TD Jakes ain't small. I'm just saying. If it's a group thing, it's a group thing. You gotta think about, you got Rick Ross, you got Khaled, we talk about heavy hitters.
It started with Cassie. One woman, one story, and one powerful man accused of horrifying things. But within just 3 weeks, the courtroom transformed into something else entirely. What began as a personal account of control and pain is now an unrecognizable web of secrets, testimonies, and whispered names that no one ever expected to hear in public. Names like Will Smith, Meek Mill, even TD Jakes. What's happening inside that courtroom isn't just legal theater anymore. It's a slow-motion explosion tearing open the glossy surface of Hollywood. With every new witness, every fresh leak, the illusion fades. These aren't tabloid rumors. They're sworn statements, federal agents, and disturbing recordings played behind locked doors. The public can't see them. No cameras, no phones, just silence and speculation. But as each piece slips into place, it becomes clear. Something massive has been hiding in plain sight. Let's break it all down. The moment Capricorn Clark took the stand, the courtroom shifted. What started as just another day in a high-profile trial quickly transformed when she brought up something so bizarre that people weren't sure if they had heard it right. A 50-foot bed. That's not a typo. A bed longer than a semi-truck, constructed in secret for reasons that quickly made everyone uncomfortable. It wasn't a conversation about interior design or luxury living. She said the bed was made for large gatherings. Not just parties with celebrities, but encounters involving multiple individuals, some of whom were well known, all connected by their relationship to one man. It painted an image of excess and extravagance, but not in a glamorous sense. Instead, it hinted at something coordinated and hidden. The sheer logistics of a bed that size told its own story. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was premeditated, expensive, and purposeful. As reporters picked up the story, the internet didn't know what to do with it. Was it a symbol of power, a joke taken too far, or a sign of a culture so far removed from reality that something that massive could exist without scrutiny? Clark didn't name every guest who used it, but the names she did mention were heavy enough to shift the tone of the entire trial. It wasn't about isolated behavior anymore. It hinted at circles of influence, carefully curated lists, and events that may have been concealed behind velvet ropes and private jets. And outside the courtroom, a frenzy was building. This wasn't just about legal consequences anymore. It was about reputation, image, and a crumbling illusion of control. The 50-foot bed wasn't just furniture. It was a monument to something people are only beginning to understand. And what followed made it clear that this was just the first crack in the foundation. The atmosphere inside the courtroom changed completely once the audio was introduced. There had already been whispers about what might be played, with rumors about content so unsettling that the courtroom had been cleared of any electronic devices. No phones, no recorders, just people, silence, and the weight of what they were about to hear. When the clip began, it reportedly stopped everyone cold. It wasn't just a conversation or a heated exchange. It was something far more intense, something that left several people unable to speak afterward. Witnesses described it not in full detail, since legally they couldn't, but even their vague references made it clear. This wasn't the kind of thing you'd expect from someone in the spotlight. What made it worse was the silence afterward. Not a sound, just stunned expressions and uneasy glances across the room. That was when Capricorn Clark's testimony took a darker turn.
She testified she was held against her will twice, at one point alleging she was forced from her apartment and into a car to take Combs and one of his bodyguards to the home of rapper Kid Cudi to, quote, him. Cudi was dating his ex, Cassie Ventura, at the time. Clark also claimed Combs threatened to kill Ventura if she didn't convince Kid Cudi not to tell police that Combs was allegedly involved with a break-in at his house. Clark also telling the jury that a large man repeatedly administered lie detector tests to her on suspicion that she stole jewelry loaned to Combs. She testified that this man said if she flunked the test, they're going to throw you in the East River.
She told the court that she had been forced into a vehicle against her will, not once but twice, and taken to confront another artist. The destination was the home of a well-known rapper who had been romantically linked to the woman at the center of the case. The motive, according to Clark, wasn't a conversation or an apology. It was retaliation. She claimed she was made to accompany this confrontation not as a guest, but as a pawn, part of an effort to intimidate or silence. Later, in a separate incident, she said she was held for several days and repeatedly subjected to lie detector tests after a piece of jewelry went missing. A massive man, smoking constantly and towering over her, allegedly ran the sessions. The message was simple: pass or disappear. That threat wasn't abstract. She was told directly that failure meant being thrown into a river. The courtroom didn't gasp. It didn't need to. Everyone was already holding their breath. And as the silence lingered, it became clear that this wasn't just about intimidation. It was about control on a level few had imagined. But that was only the beginning, because the next testimony would bring a new voice, someone who had seen even more and kept it buried for years. As the week continued, the courtroom entered a new phase of the trial. It was no longer just the voices of former assistants or behind-the-scenes staff being heard. Now, artists who had once stood beside the accused were stepping forward. These were not outsiders. They were former collaborators, individuals who had shared stages, green rooms, and hotel suites. One of the most compelling figures to take the stand was Dawn Richards, a singer known for her role in a popular girl group that once dominated the charts. But the person who walked into the courtroom looked nothing like the polished performer fans remembered. Her face was pale, her shoulders tight, and her delivery carried the weight of years she had never spoken about until now. She didn't offer vague hints or safe recollections. She gave details, clear, concrete, and damning.
In 2009, did you observe an incident between Puff and Cassie? Yes, she was attacked by Sean and kicked. Did you see more violence by him against Cassie? Often. The government then shows Dawn Richard a picture of Diddy Dirty Money. When were you a member of this group? 2009 to 2011. The incident in 2009 when Sean Combs beat Cassie. Where was it? In Sean Combs' LA home. We were recording. What did he do? He was saying, "Where the F is my food?" He grabbed a black skillet with eggs and tried to hit her over the head. Cassie dropped to the ground. What did she do? She was in a fetal position. Then what? Sean Combs was kicking her in the head and the body and then dragged her up to the first floor. Glass was breaking and yelling. I was scared for her and for me too. Did you intervene? No. Did you call the police? No. The next day, what happened? He said it had been passionate and she was okay, and that it would be better if we didn't talk, that people could end up missing. How did you understand that? Death. Diddy's team then yells objection. Then the judge calls a sidebar and ends her testimony for the day. But Dawn Richard will be back on Monday to give the rest of her full testimony against Diddy. But right before they brought Dawn Richard in, they actually had a Homeland Security agent testify against Diddy about when they came and arrested him to take him to jail. So let's go ahead and get into that. The government asked, when Sean Combs was arrested, where did you go? The Park Hyatt Hotel, room 2115, where he was staying. They show a picture to the jury of his hotel suite, and what did you do? We assigned a letter to each room and began to search. What was your role? I took photographs of items and then signed them on the 6051 form. What was found in the closet? They then show a picture to the jury, and it was plastic bags full of Johnson & Johnson baby oil and Astroglide bottles.
Richards testified that she had seen a moment where something as small as a late dinner turned into an eruption. She described how a skillet filled with eggs was picked up in anger, how it was nearly used to strike someone, and how the woman on the receiving end collapsed into a defensive position. Richards didn't stop there. She explained that the situation escalated, with kicks and shouting, broken glass, and fear that spread through the entire house. But perhaps the most disturbing part was what happened the next day. The accused told her and another bandmate that things had gotten passionate, that everything was fine now, and that it was better if no one said anything. The warning was clear, not direct, but heavy enough to linger. She said she interpreted it as a threat, that if anyone spoke, people could vanish. In a world where careers can be ended with a single phone call, that kind of pressure becomes impossible to ignore. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The truth in her words did the damage. And just as the courtroom absorbed what she had revealed, it pivoted once again, this time toward federal agents with first-hand knowledge of what happened after the headlines faded. Just as the courtroom began to digest the emotional weight of Dawn Richards' testimony, the focus abruptly shifted. The next person to take the stand wasn't an artist or a former employee. It was a Homeland Security agent, someone who had participated directly in one of the most pivotal moments of the investigation. This wasn't hearsay or speculation. It was law enforcement, speaking with the precision of someone trained to notice every detail. He explained how the arrest unfolded, describing the raid of a luxury hotel suite where the accused had been staying. What they found during that search was unexpected and unsettling. Inside the closet of the suite were plastic bags filled with items that raised serious questions. Not illegal substances or weapons, but objects whose presence hinted at activities far outside the realm of ordinary. Bottles of oil, lubricants, and items with no clear explanation were photographed and submitted as evidence. It wasn't about what the items were, but about the context in which they were discovered, the secrecy behind them, and the larger story. They might support, but the most powerful moment didn't come from the agent's words. It came from the reaction of the defendant's own family. As soon as the contents of the raid were shown in court, a quiet moment passed before two of his daughters rose from their seats and walked out.
You guys really sat through that whole case and kept your spirits high. I really like that for y'all. That was great. Keep your spirits up, y'all. You're doing great. And y'all are eating it. Y'all look good.
Step to the side, please.
Y'all are beautiful. Keep smiling. Keep your spirits
How
up.
you guys feeling? How'd it go today? Step to the side, please.
They did their thing in there.
How was your father today? Congratulations to NYU, Chet. Give us little space. Give us little space. Give us little space. Step to the side, please. Excuse me. Watch out. Give us little space, please. Come on, give us little space.
No tears, no arguments, no exchange of words, just a silent, pale exit. They didn't look at the cameras, the judge, or even their father. They just left the room. And while no one said it aloud, everyone seemed to understand what had triggered their departure. Witnesses who had been calm all morning suddenly looked uneasy. The weight of the images, combined with what had been described earlier in the week, seemed to create a breaking point. For the first time, the public saw the emotional toll not just on the alleged victims or accusers, but on the people closest to the accused. And then, almost like a whisper across the room, another name surfaced. It wasn't expected. It wasn't on any official witness list. But when it was spoken, everything changed again. When the name Will Smith entered the courtroom conversation, it didn't come through a tabloid headline or a social media theory. It came through sworn testimony, a name mentioned plainly, yet it carried the weight of an entire career and a reputation built over decades. Up until that point, much of the trial had revolved around individuals directly connected to the central figure. But now, it was expanding into places no one had anticipated. Smith's name was reportedly referenced in court audio, sparking a chain reaction far beyond the courtroom walls. Online, users began rewatching old interviews and digging through years of archived content. They weren't looking for entertainment. They were looking for clues. Past moments that once seemed harmless suddenly took on a different tone. A few comments here, an awkward body language shift there, all began to look suspicious when seen through the lens of new allegations. What gave the claims even more weight was the testimony from Will Smith's former assistant. This wasn't a stranger with secondhand stories. This was someone who said they had seen things firsthand. The assistant claimed to have walked in on Smith and another actor in an extremely private moment. That actor was Dwayne Martin, a longtime friend. According to him, what he witnessed wasn't hearsay or rumor. It was real.
Jada was the woman that everybody wanted, and Will needed that validation to have that type of woman.
You saw her say that Will Smith had a small.
Oh, I am saying to you, if a woman is used to something the size of a baby leg and you come in with a pinky toe, there's nothing you can do to please her. You can buy her 80 cars, you can get her 80 private jets. If she's itching for that baby leg, she want that baby leg. You can beat a person so much that they fall into submission.
And who needs enemies when they got friends like you?
Oh, I could tell you what goes on the inside. Everybody else is just speculation.
Damn. Somebody told me my picture's in the book.
You know, your picture's in the book and your name is in the book. So you're doing some real elegant pimp. I'm blowing you up.
I love that.
I'm blowing you up.
This is what Jada makes the new people do. And I ain't gonna say no, they probably been there after myself, right? They will make you check into a rehab. And they'll pay for the rehab. Even though you're not on drugs, they're gonna pay for the rehab. And you have to go if you want to work with them. And then I've saw sexual acts that I walked in on.
Who'd you walk in on?
Him and Dwayne Martin.
Okay.
Hollywood is the hurry up and wait game. So 3 minutes later, after them telling me, hey, you got eyes on Will, we need him to come watch this. So I'm running all over the studio. He's not in his dressing room. I go to the cafeteria. I'm like, what? But I see his.
And although Smith's team has firmly denied the claims, the testimony itself took on a life of its own. It was shared, clipped, analyzed, and debated endlessly. Commentators like Jaguar Wright began to speak out again, suggesting that these weren't isolated stories, but part of a long-standing pattern of secrets kept from the public.
What you're saying reaches the ears of Will Smith, and he needs to get at least, if there's smoke, there's fire, let me grab a fan.
Number one, as far as Will Smith is concerned, until he does right by all of those children that were harmed and corrupted while in his care, children that grew up to be men, boys like Bashir Gray, August Alsina, your own son. Like, your own son. Do people forget about that voice clip that I played from Brother Belial?
Hey.
Has anybody seen Belial?
Come on.
I asked him, didn't I ask for him last year?
Come on.
Where's Belial? Is he missing with Cuba? Have they all moved to Bali with Russell Simmons and Kevin Liles?
I would always say it is interesting when you speak on, Jaden Smith and you see the hug with Justin Bieber. And then for Bashir, you see him all of a sudden fighting over Sydney Starr with Eddie Winslow. It does question what happens in the entertainment industry that makes someone go into just being very close with men on men contact. It's interesting, I'll say the least.
You want to know the thing that bothers me most about Bashir Gray? I actually think he's doing all of this so they'll take him back in the club. And they're not. They're gonna keep gaslighting you and playing with you, promising you one thing or another.
For the average viewer, it was a sudden rupture in what had once felt like a polished Hollywood image. Whether true or not, the impact was immediate. And while Smith stayed mostly silent, the internet wasn't willing to move on. The conversation had just shifted into even more volatile territory. And the next name to surface would only add more fuel to the fire. Following the uproar around Will Smith, another name entered the discussion with a level of noise that couldn't be ignored. Meek Mill's connection to the trial did not come through any direct charges or formal testimony. Instead, it surfaced through alleged references made in the same courtroom audio that had already disrupted the usual rhythm of the proceedings. Just the mention of his name triggered an online storm. But the situation intensified when Meek responded publicly. Within hours, his social media lit up with a string of defensive messages. Some were vague, others emotional, and many carried a sharp tone that suggested he was deeply rattled by what was being said. Rather than easing tensions, the posts had the opposite effect. Internet users immediately began pulling past photos, resurfacing clips from interviews, and revisiting party footage that once seemed trivial.
Whereas that he's dressing like, he dressing the same, he dressing like Diddy, hugged up with Diddy. I think that Lil Rod know a lot of but I know this. Two men dress alike, it's just like two men laying down. When they both get up, they both homos. And that's real talk, bruh. My man, you go to a party, dog, and the nigga got the same shirt you got on, I'm taking my shirt off. I'm walking around in a t-shirt. And then, not to blow Meek Mill up out the water or anything like that, it was said that they checked his Google search and all the other shit, and he was searching for some online gay porn and all that other shit like that.
Oh, wow.
That shit is crazy, bro. But listen, those are what, you know, it's crazy that money, that lifestyle, and you trying to fit into something get you. These guys never set out to do all this shit. Meek Mills, when he got into the game, he didn't set out to be questioned about his manhood with Diddy, but he put himself in that position.
In one video, Meek appeared at a poolside birthday party thrown by the man at the center of the trial. Shirtless guests surrounded him, and he was addressed in a way that quickly turned into a meme. What was once playful now felt like fuel for a larger fire.
Hey, what's up, King Son? Man, you doing it, man. You deserve it, Daddy. You putting in that work. Proud of you. I love you. Yeah.
This reaction triggered a wave of digital investigation. Users posted what they called receipts. These included old tweets, interviews, photos, and body language breakdowns from years prior. Some focused on matching outfits Meek had worn with the accused. Others dug into moments where his unease in certain social settings felt more noticeable in hindsight. Rumors even spread that internet search data had been quietly entered into evidence, though no verified source has confirmed that detail. Regardless, the narrative was no longer in Meek's control. Every tweet he posted in defense of his name was met with layers of commentary, mockery, and skepticism. It became less about truth and more about perception. In the eyes of the internet, he was no longer just a rapper with a successful career. He was a symbol of how deep the story might go. Even if the courtroom never asked for his testimony, the public already had. And just as the attention surrounding him reached a boiling point, people started focusing on something that no one outside the courtroom had actually heard. The audio recordings. Not imagined, not fictional, but real. And their contents had remained sealed in silence. While names like Will Smith and Meek Mill captured public attention, there was something else simmering just beneath the surface. Something far more mysterious and unsettling. The tapes. Everyone inside the courtroom knew about them, but no one outside had heard a single second. These recordings were not rumors passed around on social media. They were real, submitted as evidence, and reportedly played in a closed setting without any access to phones or recording devices. Those who were present described the atmosphere as deeply uncomfortable, even haunting. According to sources, the content was not simply inappropriate or embarrassing, it was something that made seasoned legal professionals stop speaking and simply stare. What was on those tapes? No one has confirmed the exact details, but the hints alone have been enough to shake the courtroom and ignite public speculation. Some say the audio captured moments of extreme mistreatment. Others claim that recognizable voices could be heard laughing during situations that most would find deeply disturbing. But without an official release, all the world can do is imagine. That imagination has grown darker by the day. Some believe the tapes are being kept quiet to protect the reputations of powerful individuals. Others think the silence is meant to prevent legal escalation or widespread media fallout. There are also those who suspect that the recordings are so damaging they could spark entirely new investigations involving people far beyond the courtroom walls. Individuals with influence, celebrity status, and major business ties may be implicated if the full content ever reaches the public. While some view this as a long overdue moment of truth, others worry that it could destroy more than just careers. For now, the recordings remain locked behind legal protocol. But that silence has only fueled public curiosity. If the people already named are only the surface of what those tapes reveal, then the real story might be buried much deeper. And just when it feels like the narrative has reached its limit, attention shifts yet again. This time, toward a name long associated with faith and leadership, now caught in a conversation no one expected. As the court testimonies continued to send shockwaves through both the entertainment world and online communities, a new name emerged from an entirely different corner of public life. This time, it was not a celebrity known for music or film. It was a figure associated with faith, guidance, and leadership. Bishop T.D. Jakes. His connection wasn't brought up by accident or through rumor. It surfaced in conversations tied to business dealings and media platforms. Specifically, Jakes was said to have a professional relationship with Revolt, the media company founded by the man now facing intense legal scrutiny. This raised eyebrows not because of any direct involvement in the allegations, but because of what it suggested. If someone so publicly tied to moral authority had financial or collaborative ties to an enterprise now being examined in federal court, the implications were heavy. People began asking difficult questions. Was he aware of what was happening behind the scenes? Was it just a coincidence? Or something more complicated?
How you feel about these rumors surrounding, Diddy and TD Jakes?
I'm looking at him as a saint going to a party that ain't nothing but sin. Drinking, maybe fornication, man on man, woman on woman, he on she. But maybe he there to lay some hands on somebody. Maybe he there to save some souls. I know he got a contract with Revolt.
Public reaction was mixed. Some rushed to his defense, insisting that a business contract does not equal personal involvement. Others weren't so sure. They pointed to the growing list of powerful people who had remained silent despite mounting allegations and disturbing testimonies. What would make a spiritual leader associate with a company that was now under such scrutiny? Could it have been simply about influence? Or was there something being overlooked? The speculation only grew when clips resurfaced of Jakes attending events hosted by the same figures currently under fire. These appearances, once seen as harmless, were now re-examined with a sense of unease. Critics wondered whether the line between faith-based leadership and celebrity access had become blurred. Whether knowingly or not, Jakes had entered a storm that didn't care about reputations or robes. It cared only about connection and proximity. And as more names continued to surface, the courtroom and the public became fixated on one of the most important testimonies so far. A witness who had endured more than silence and suspicion. A person who had lived it all from the inside and was finally ready to speak. Among all the testimonies heard in court, few offered a closer look into the daily environment than Capricorn Clark's. Unlike others who may have witnessed isolated incidents, Clark described what it felt like to work within a world built on constant surveillance, paranoia, and pressure. One of the most haunting accounts came from her experience following a July 4th event in the Hamptons. After the party, she was entrusted with several high-value pieces of jewelry that were meant to be flown to Miami. But when she discovered the jewelry was missing, everything changed.
A lot. Eva, she testified that Sean Combs at one point threatened to kill Kid Cudi after finding out that he began dating Cassie Ventura. But she talked about 3 distinct episodes as prosecutors today started to home in on one of the elements of the alleged racketeering conspiracy, and that's kidnapping. Capricorn Clark said in 2004 in New York, she was forced to take a lie detector test for 5 days straight on suspicion of stealing jewelry. In 2008, she said Sean Combs charged at her and kept shoving her with his hand. She demonstrated for the jury until pushing her all the way out of his house in Miami Beach when she said that she hates it here and forced her out of the house. And then in 2011 in Los Angeles is when she says she was forced at gunpoint into a car to go to Kid Cudi's house because Sean Combs was very upset.
Aaron, Clark painted a picture of what it was like to work for Combs, saying she even had to take a lie detector test. Why did she have to do that?
This goes back to July 4th weekend in the Hamptons. Sean Combs was hosting one of his now famous white parties, and he was able to wear 3 very high-end pieces of jewelry loaned to him by Jacob the jeweler. And after the party, Capricorn Clark was supposed to take possession of the jewelry and bring it on a private plane to Miami Beach, where Combs was headed. And on her way to the airport, she realized the bag wasn't there, and she said that she suspected it was an inside job. But apparently Combs and one of his bodyguards, a guy by the name of Uncle Paulie, that's how he was known, ended up taking her to what would be the headquarters of Bad Boy Entertainment. At the time, it was on 40th Street and Broadway. This was going to move uptown into the upper 50s, but the building wasn't finished, and she recalled for the jury being taken to a dilapidated space. There was only a folding table and chairs, and she remembered a huge guy, 5 times her size, chain smoking, and hooking her up to a lie detector machine every day for 5 days straight, and threatening that if she failed the test, she'd be thrown into the East River.
She said she suspected an inside job. Instead of support or investigation, she was taken to a dilapidated office and forced to undergo repeated lie detector tests. Not once, not twice, but every day for 5 days straight. She described a massive man, chain smoking beside her, hooking her up to wires, and coldly repeating the same questions. She was told plainly that if she failed, the consequences would be more than professional. One of the threats she claimed to have received involved being thrown into a river, which left no room for misunderstanding. This wasn't about finding the truth. It was about control. And that control didn't end with the jewelry. Clark went on to describe how even after leaving that toxic environment, she felt blacklisted in the industry. Every door she knocked on was suddenly closed. Opportunities vanished. Phone calls stopped being returned. For a while, she tried to move forward and escape the weight of her past, but nothing worked. Eventually, she found herself returning to the very person she had tried to distance herself from. Not because she wanted to, but because she felt she had no choice.
After the defense suggested that, she just loved Sean Combs, and how could any of this be true? She said, look, he blackballed me in the music industry, stymied her as she tried to get other work, and so eventually she felt like she had no choice but to return to Sean Combs, and that's why she was so eager to work for him.
I'm curious what Combs' response was hearing this in the courtroom.
He was a really active defendant today. For the whole trial, he's been listening intently, scribbling notes, but on several occasions as Capricorn Clark was testifying, he would whisper into his attorney's ear, and Mark Agnifilo would then jump up to object when Capricorn Clark was trying to make a point. So he clearly did not remember the course of events that she described today the same way that Capricorn Clark did, and it was almost as if he was directing some of the cross-examination.
Aaron Kotursky for us there outside the federal court in Manhattan. Thank you so much. And here to dig into the start of week 3 of this trial is ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer. You've been in the courtroom almost all of this trial, right? So whose testimony so far do you think has been the most significant?
Well, I think the obvious answer has got to be Cassie Ventura. Cassie Ventura for a number of reasons. One, according to the government, she is victim number 1, and she does describe a lot of the allegations that the government is putting forward against Sean Combs, whether it be the racketeering conspiracy as to how this criminal enterprise operated, the different players. She's named a few of the security guards, for example, D-Rock, Ruben, also the workers and dancers who participated in these freak-offs. She's named them all because she participated in hiring them, according to her, because Sean Combs made her do so. And then, of course, just hearing the other details, like Kid Cudi's car being hit with a Molotov cocktail. That's really giving us direction as the case continues.
She said she was pulled back in, not with contracts, but with fear. The fear that she had no place else to go. Her testimony painted a picture not just of wrongdoing, but of a systematic environment designed to isolate and dominate. She wasn't testifying about a single moment. She was describing a culture, one built on silence, manipulation, and the promise that anyone who left would be replaced without a second thought. And with that level of control revealed, the courtroom turned its attention to the broader implications. Because if this was more than one person's pattern, then what they were facing wasn't just misconduct. It was the structure of something much larger. As the trial progressed, a new word began to surface more frequently, both inside the courtroom and across online discussions. RICO, short for racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations. It's a legal term typically reserved for organized crime networks. But now, prosecutors were openly exploring whether what they had uncovered went beyond individual behavior. They were asking whether the allegations pointed to a broader structure, one involving coordination, coercion, and a long-standing pattern of illegal conduct. This wasn't about one celebrity's private life spiraling out of control. This was about the possibility that a full enterprise had been built on manipulation, intimidation, and silence. Witnesses spoke of secret parties, hidden recordings, and enforced obedience. Several individuals described how roles were assigned and tasks were carried out in ways that suggested hierarchy and order. And that raised a question that no one wanted to answer out loud. If this was an operation, who else was involved? The entertainment industry, which once stood behind many of the figures now being questioned, has gone quiet. Major companies that once courted these names have paused partnerships and pulled back on public statements. Behind the scenes, executives are reviewing contracts, lawyers are fielding quiet phone calls, and publicists are crafting new talking points. But despite their silence, the public has grown louder. Viewers and fans who once overlooked rumors now scroll endlessly through old footage, reading between the lines and stitching together a narrative that spans decades. Each name mentioned in court adds another layer. Each document, each testimony widens the circle. And the scariest part is that there may still be people involved whose names have not yet been spoken. If the allegations continue expanding, and if the RICO case solidifies, this trial could be remembered not just for holding one man accountable, but for exposing how deep the roots of corruption in entertainment truly go. The case is no longer just about what happened. It's about how long it was allowed to happen, and how many people stayed quiet to protect the illusion. This case isn't slowing down. In fact, it's gaining momentum and attention. The internet never forgets. It replays every clip, dissects every rumor, and connects dots even the courtroom won't touch. And now, the public wants answers. Because if this is just the beginning, then who else is hiding in the shadows? The story might be unfolding in court, but the real trial, the one happening in the court of public opinion, has only just begun. And in that courtroom, there are no sidebars, no objections, no sealed tapes, only questions, and a growing hunger for the truth. If you made it this far, you already know this story is bigger than any one person. The truth is still unfolding, and what happens next could change everything. So stay curious, stay questioning, and don't let this disappear into silence. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think the industry isn't telling us? And if you want to keep following the real story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're just getting started. Stay tuned.